I'm so glad I caught you before you went out of town and moved. Why are you moving?
I'm moving for residency, so I'm starting my residency in a couple of weeks. Unfortunately, I'm living in Austin, but gonna be a great experience.
Okay, so we are from Austin. We grew up together. Basically, I'm like one of your big sisters. And you worked with the Art of Applying way back in 2018 and 2019 to apply to medical school. And now you've already graduated from medical school and you're about to go to your residency. And where are you moving to?
I'm moving to Chicago for my residency in Interventional Radiology.
Interventional Radiology. I had never heard those two words put together before you told me about it. So that is super cool. I would love to know where you did go to medical school, and then I'll ask you about some other stuff.
Yeah, so I went to medical school at University of Incarnate Word in San Antonio, Texas.
Okay, medical school is 4 years. How many more years do we have to go?
For me, my residency is 6 years.
That's a lot of time. That's a lot of school, but Chicago's not a bad place to be for that time. Brandon, the people out there watching, they want to know your stats. Just all the stuff that the people on Reddit and the other forums want to know so they can say, okay, if it worked for him, it could work for me.
So yeah, I'll start. Like Kaneisha was saying, I was born and raised in Austin, Texas. I'm a biracial male, and I grew up in a middle-class family. I had health issues as a child. I had Ohlier's disease, so I was always in the hospital, and that was what first really guided me towards medicine and got me interested in medicine. And so I decided when I was young that I wanted to be a doctor. And I always went towards that way, but I didn't know what that meant or what that process looked like at all. I went to a liberal arts school, Southwestern University in Georgetown, and I majored in biology, switched from biology to biochemistry, switched from biochemistry to theater, musical theater, and did musical theater for a year and was gonna stay a musical theater major, but then realized doing auditions and having to work on plays from 5 to 10 and then doing my work for my prereqs for medical school was getting too difficult in that year. So I went back to biology and just minored in theater. And so I ended up graduating with a BA in biology from Southwestern University. My overall GPA was a 3.6 and my science GPA was not as good. It was a 3.3. When you look at the medical school averages, I was scared when I saw that.
Okay, right? Understood. I think at the Art of Applying, because we do work with what I call the wild cards, I'm used to seeing people where organic chemistry just decimated their GPA.
Yeah. That's exactly what happened. So I went into OChem, and it was the first time I had no idea what was happening in class, and I actually ended up withdrawing. I was like, oh, I need to focus more of my time on that class because I did not understand the concepts. And it was the first time I felt like I couldn't do something. And so that was difficult, but I eventually made it through.
You did make it through. Our parents went to college. They went to the same college, met there, but nobody has a graduate degree that we grew up with, that we knew. And so we're the first generation to have those professional graduate degrees. A lot of times we don't know what we don't know. Right. And we didn't take special summer classes or whatever to prepare. The only way we learn is running into a brick wall, even though you've maybe sailed through high school, honors classes or whatever, and then you get to college and it's very humbling and it can be very discouraging and discombobulating to feel like, I'm smart, why aren't my grades showing it? Yeah. So for sure. And then I love hearing about the musical theater part as well. I can really see that. I'm sad I've never gotten to see you perform. That's super cool. We definitely have that like love of the camera and of the stage. I can imagine that you were amazing. I don't think you yet told us your age when you were applying.
Right. And so that was also a process, right? Because since I was young, I wanted to be a doctor. But then when I graduated, I decided that I needed to explore other avenues because since I was 4 or 5, I always wanted to be a doctor. So I always was taking AP science classes. I was always doing summer camps at science things. I found musical theater and I realized that I like other things. I knew medical school is a commitment. And before I decided to do that commitment, which is a minimum of 7 years for medical school and minimum of 3 if you finish residency, I knew I wanted to explore all avenues. I graduated and I went to California and worked as a summer camp counselor. I was in Punk Pines, which is in the El Dorado National Forest. I was there actually for a few years. Ended up working full-time for them and living in San Francisco Bay Area as well. Came back because California was too expensive for me. Decided I want to do what my family was doing and became a tax analyst or customer service representative for the Internal Revenue Service, for the IRS. Did that for 4 years and loved it, but wasn't as fulfilled as I could have been. When I decided I wanted to go to med school, I was 28. By the time I actually applied and got accepted, I was 30.
Okay, so there's a gap between the decision at 28 and 30 when you actually got in. When you were 28, were you already feeling on the older side, or is that more the average?
I was like, I'm a little older, and I had a job that paid decently and that I was happy with, even though I was like, I want to go to med school now. Still part of me was like, should I?
Okay. Now, when you say should I, what were the questions? Was it, I don't want to not have income for X number of years. I don't want to move to some random place. What were the questions and the doubts that you had?
I had been out of school 6 years. By then, I was worried about entering medical school and being behind already because I felt I had people that had gotten their masters or had done research or had still been in the science field or industry and still had known all of that information that we had to memorize for the MCAT or for science classes. I had lost a lot of that because I was no longer doing work that required that. And then another big part was applying to medical school isn't cheap. I did have a job, luckily, like I said, but then I had to decide how much was I going to put into it.
Yep.
Am I applying broadly everywhere and spending $5,000, $6,000 on applications and maybe not getting accepted? Or am I going to look at schools that I think would benefit me and I fit their criteria and also what they're looking for in an applicant? Spend less money, but also lower my chances maybe of not getting in because I'm applying to less schools. So there was just a lot of thought put into it and deciding if it was the right decision for me.
And how many times did you take the MCAT?
I ended up taking the MCAT 3 times total in 6 years.
I want to ask if you feel comfortable sharing your MCAT score.
Yeah, so my first MCAT, but I took it right after college, and I think it was a 26, and I think the average was a 30 at the time. And then I took it again in 2018, and I got a 505. The 530 is a perfect score or something, but at that time the medical school average was a 507.
Okay, so it was still a few
Slightly
points
below
below.
average.
Okay.
I hadn't been studying for it actually because I was working full time and very busy. I studied and 6 months later took it. The third time I took it, I actually got a 503.
Oh, it went down. I know, that's so discouraging.
Yeah, but and like you said, I was on the internet saying who's got accepted with a 505 and a 3.5 GPA when the average was a 3.7. So from all statistics that I looked at, I was a below average applicant.
The numbers,
The numbers said I was a below average applicant.
Yeah, and that is the case with a lot of our clients. Me, myself, I had a 3.6 or 3.5 GPA, but my GMAT score was a 620 out of 800. And that was the exact same score I got on day one of studying. Like day one of study, I got a 620 to be like, oh, that's your starting point. I studied really, really hard. And then the day of the test, I got the exact same score. And I was like, well, that's what I'm applying with. And like a 620 is quite on the low side for the kind of schools I was applying to. But I was like, I have to apply anyway. So was there an application round in there in which you didn't get into any schools?
I actually applied at 28, but I only applied to the Texas schools because Texas has a different application.
Okay.
And my application was just thrown together.
This is before he worked with the
Yes.
Yes.
I had Grammarly was the only person that edited my personal statement.
Grammarly, not a person. Grammarly is AI.
And so I was just like, I'm gonna just try for it. And I did get an interview.
You got one interview out of 5 schools or
It was
so?
about 7.
7 schools, 1 interview. Okay.
I applied late in the season and unfortunately didn't get accepted to that one school.
Okay. And so now let's talk about working with the art of applying. I don't remember. Did I reach out to you? Did you reach out to me?
I think what had happened was I was telling you that I was applying and you were asking me, oh, that's what I do. I help people get in.
Let me help you. Yeah.
And I was hesitant because I didn't know this process. I didn't know even, like, what are you going to help me with? I got into college.
Yeah, what could we possibly help you with?
Right.
So why don't you answer that question?
For me, the first big thing was just having other eyes on the biggest part of my application at that time, which was my personal statement. I kept reworking it with y'all, and it was just nice because I hadn't gotten feedback like that from somebody. I remember giving it to friends. You don't get the same feedback as people that are hired to do this and that have seen thousands of personal statements. And so that was the first big thing. But I think the biggest thing for me in my application was pointing out things that I didn't think were important, then helping me realize how important they were, and then tailoring my application around a theme. And so instead of just having I volunteered, I worked here, I did this, it was more like, why are you applying to medical school? You're going to tell that story in your personal statement. I see your volunteer work was with underserved communities. Why did you do that? And it made me realize that I was going to medical school to work with underserved communities. I liked working with underserved communities, and then it helped shape my app to show that. And so I wasn't just an applicant that was applying to medical school, but by my application, medical schools could tell why I was applying, and that my application supported that reason. So I think that made me a better applicant.
Oh, beautifully said, beautifully said. One way I like to put it is, in a way, we help you develop an applicant personal brand so that there's this golden thread that runs through everything you've done. Maybe when you were doing those things, you didn't even realize that everything fit together. No, we didn't grow up low income, but our parents sure did, right? And like our extended families are somewhere in that situation. And so, yeah, just being able to add it all together and make it this almost like a cinematic hero's journey. So yeah, that was really beautifully said. What about the art of applying is here to help someone, but they're just like, well, I don't want to waste their time, or I don't want to ask stupid questions, or that kind of thing. What would you say to someone who's worried that they don't even know enough to make use of the help?
You don't know what they can do for you, and I didn't know how to utilize it. And the thing is, you ask questions because that's how you find out how you can best utilize their services, and how also you can just best get everything out that you want to. And so I say that everybody has those fears. Everybody has that confusion, especially if you've never used a service like this before, or have asked for help like I did. But once you do, it gets easier to ask for help, and it gets easier to say, oh, also, what about this? And if you don't do that, you either can or you can connect them to somebody that can help.
That's right.
So I think that is a big thing about it too, is it's building a network as well to get other things accomplished, or to help with other parts that you might not even know you need help with.
Absolutely. Has learning how to ask for help better and more often, have you seen that in other areas of your life, your personal life, or in your career, or in your relationship?
Yeah, I think that especially in medical school, like you're always asking for help, you're helping out other people. And going through this process, actually, I became an interviewer for my school.
Oh, I love it.
Yes. I interviewed other students. I started talking to other students about now residency applications and how to get into residency. And so I think that from me asking questions, I do it in my personal life more. I do it in medical school, did it all the time, and didn't feel bad about it because I had done it previously.
What's an example of something you could ask for help for in medical school?
Yeah, so in medical school, you're rounding on patients, right?
I don't know what that means.
So you're in the hospital, right? You're assigned a certain amount of patients, and you're supposed to know everything that's going on with them before you go and talk to an attending.
And attending is the physician, the doctor. Okay.
Yes, the physician. Before, a lot of times I saw other people just go and say, oh, this patient is sleeping, I'm not going to bother them, which is great. Don't bother them when they're sleeping. But they would just write down their vital signs, like the blood pressure or what came back on a lab. Whereas I was like, oh, that's great and all, but let me go talk to the nurses. Let me ask the nurses, hey, did anything happen during the night? Hey, have y'all talked to their family? And a lot of students wouldn't do that. They were uncomfortable talking to people they hadn't met before, or they felt like they were a nuisance. Whereas it helped me not only learn more about the patient, but then it helped me speak to the nurses and get to know the nurses, so that later on, it was easier to talk to them. And it was easier for them to say, hey, Brandon, we forgot to tell you this when we were going down the halls. They would just say hi to me. So it honestly helped me build relationships in the hospital too.
Now what I want to do is I'm going to say things for why I can't apply to medical school, and you're going to tell me some encouragement, insider advice. So the first one is, I'm 31, I'm too old, it's too late.
And I would say it's never too late. I had people in my class that were in their 50s.
Wow.
And at the end of the day, are you going to be happy with whatever you're doing at the time? If that's what you want to be as a physician, then going to medical school at 30, going at 50 is going to get you to what you want to do and are make you happy for the rest of your life if that's what you want to do. So you're never too old to go. And no matter what age you go, there's going to be somebody in your class probably that is around that age. The youngest in my class was 19 and the oldest was in their 50s. They were both very smart, but they were both very good at different things. You know? Having that life experience helped me so much in medical school. That's actually what I love about being a non-traditional student is I've had life experience and I've talked to people in all different walks of life, and I've had patients be like, that student before you was very awkward. That was probably my strongest suit still to this day, is just being able to talk to patients, and I think that's one of the most important things.
It is,
if not the most important.
It is so important. Okay, so some more objections are, I already applied once, I didn't get in. I applied to 8 schools. I got 2 interviews, and it's insulting to get interviewed and then rejected. That means they met me and then said no. So I feel like if it was meant to be, I would have gotten in the first time.
And that's how I felt too. But then again, I looked up online and realized that a lot of these schools are taking 5%, 10%, and then out of all applications, only 40% of people get accepted. I've talked to many people in my class and other schools that have applied 3 times, 4 times to the same medical schools. And they've asked medical schools for feedback. They've gotten assistance with their applications, and they've strengthened their application, and they want to be physicians, and that was their ultimate goal. So they just kept trying and they were accepted.
Okay, I love hearing that. Also, commercial break. If you've applied to medical school and you have been rejected, we would love to look at your application and give you feedback. So come visit us at theartofapplying.com for what is called a ding analysis, where we read your whole application and help you understand where you could have improved so that you can have a successful application the next time. So let's see, another objection would be, I want to go to medical school, but I also don't want to put my all into it because I'll be crushed if I don't get in. So what I want to do is just work on my application over Thanksgiving break, put my best whatever together, and just throw my hat in the ring and see what happens. What do you think about that plan?
That's what I did in my first application, and we see it didn't work out for me. I think that to get the most out of your application, to get the most out of the time you're working on it, you put your all into it. And if you, again, don't get accepted that first time, then you work on it. But I think that just going at it with 50% of your effort is you're going to get 50% of the results or less than that. If you're only putting in 50% of the effort, you're probably not going to get accepted. And so I think that you don't have to put 100% of your time into it. You live life, but if you decide, hey, I want to apply, then say, I'm not only going to apply, but your application has to be the best that it can, and it should be the best that it can be at that point in time that you submitted.
Absolutely. And how does it feel after such a long journey of applying, having that intention, that goal, then being in medical school, and to now be moving to Chicago, which incidentally is where you have so much family, and working in your chosen field of interventional radiology? How does it feel?
Amazing. It's surreal to think that, you know, when I was 3 or 4, I told myself I either wanted to be a doctor or the Batmobile. Couldn't get a brand new mobile, so I settled as a physician is what I said.
So you were 3 and you wanted to be a doctor. Talk about purpose.
Yeah, and it is amazing. I went to my hospital this past Friday just to walk around, to see the people I'd be working with, and to see the patients that I would be helping. I couldn't stop smiling because this is what I want to do. So.
Oh, this is so wonderful. How many white coats do you have?
I have 3 from medical school, and then my residency gives me 3. But again, I'm going to be, for residency, I'll do diagnostic radiology and interventional, and we don't wear white coats. We just relax and either look at images or go and do
And y'all like
procedures.
hide in that little room. Like you're like, don't worry, everything's safe. Here's a lead vest. And then you'll go hide in a room that does not make me feel like everything is safe. So you won't be wearing a white jacket. You'll be in that little room. I am so, so proud of you. The whole family, we are all so proud of you. And I just want you to rewind all the way back to when you are 28. And I want you to speak to Brandon, who's 28.
You only have one life to live. And so you need to do what you think is best for yourself and what you think would make you the happiest. A lot of us spend over 40 hours a week at work, and a lot of people that we work with become our second families. And so it's really important to make sure that you're finding joy in the work that you do and that you're happy at what you choose to do. And so if you think, oh, I'm too old, or I have kids, or I don't have the GPA or the MCAT or the GMAT, whatever it is, you have other parts of your life that you have excelled at that can make up for those deficiencies that you think you have that really aren't, if you can talk to people about them, if you can just get yourself to a computer or to a desk and start an application, because this is your life and you need to do whatever's going to make you happy. So if that is medical school, then start that application. Talk to somebody that has done it before, or call the Art of Applying and talk to them and go for it, because if that's what's going to make you happy, you need to be happy. So do it.